Okay, so now we'll talk about ways to monitor interventions. What we first must remember is that the needs drive the goals and objectives. Then the goals and objectives drive whatever program or interventions you're providing. So this is for any student, depending on if they have a 504, they can have an intervention or referral services plan, they can have an IEP. Whatever it is, we first must identify what the needs of that student is, and then from there, develop goals and objectives to determine what type of programs and interventions they would require. This is called internal consistency. So it could be internal consistency in IEPs, intervention plans, 504s, etc. The needs identified through these assessments, any teacher data, state and informal testing, as well as observations by teachers and parents, help identify what the needs are. So once you go through that assessment, you identify the needs and then develop goals and objectives. So for example, if you have a new referral and they're presenting with delays in different areas, including reading comprehension, decoding, encoding, fluency, and phonemic awareness, you must have at least 4 goals developed to meet those different areas of need. Writing a summary of present levels instead of qualitative statements, we need to use quantifiable statements and data. So here's an example of a bad present level statement. Sarah has improved her decoding skills this year, and when reading aloud is more fluent and using appropriate inflection. So this is not supported by any type of data, or there's no quantifiable information in this. So it's a very subjective statement that wouldn't hold up in court and wouldn't hold up to measure progress. So a good way to write this would be, given a second grade passage, Sarah can fluently read 45 words per minute with 5 or fewer errors. Okay, when we look at accuracy rates, we talked about this in a past training. We were looking at independent reading levels. Word recognition is 98% or greater. Instructional would be 95% or greater. And frustration is less than 90%. Goals that indicate that 80% accuracy, for example, reading fluency, 90 words per minute at 80% accuracy, 80% of 90 is really 72 words per minute. So that's not a proficient rating scale that we need to use. So we also have to remember when we're looking at fluency to make sure that we only measure cold reads when assessing progress in reading fluency. Okay, so goals must have a condition, such as given a random selection of 20 words from a pool of 100 one-syllable words with a CVC or CVCC pattern. Student, Rick, will write what is the behavior he will write and what's the performance criteria. He will write with 95% of the words correctly on 3 consecutive weekly spelling probes. This is a very measurable and clear goal for the student. The goal must be written in a way that one teacher can pick it up and measure the same thing as the next teacher. So there's internal consistency with the IEPs, and we're collecting data based on the correct type of measurement. So here's our final goal. Given a random selection of 20 words from a pool of 100 one-syllable words with CVC or CVVC patterns, so your closed syllables and double vowel patterns, Rick will write 95% of the words correctly on 3 consecutive weekly spelling probes. Short-term objectives should be broken up into whether it's marking periods, months, some systematic way to measure progress throughout the school year. So look at the bottom, benchmark 1. For the first marking period, given a 4th grade reading passage, the student will read the passage at a rate of 68 words per minute with 97% accuracy on 3 consecutive twice weekly passage timings. Very clear objective, and it's given us when we're going to be measuring this, what the expectation is. And then when we go to second marking period, the increase in the expectation goes to a rate of 94 words. So from 68 to 94 words per minute. Now, this could have been obtained by a weekly increase determination. So you can use norm-based data to say at every week we're expecting this rate of progress for the student, and then count how many weeks are in that marking period to determine what the second and third and then the outcome of the fourth marking period would be. So you can see how these rates systematically increase while maintaining the accuracy rate at 97. Okay, here's an example short-term objective. By March, given a third grade reading passage, student can read the passage at a rate of 78 words per minute with 97% accuracy on 3 consecutive timings. So we're going to time the student 3 times and look for this fluency rate with this 97% accuracy. When we collect that data or when we're looking to form this data, we can use various norm reference scales. So you can see here, Hasbrock and Tyndall have developed oral reading fluency data. So by grade level, they'll give you the percentile rank or fall and spring norms, and then where your student should be falling. So often we have some errors when we're writing these goals, so just be cautious. Common errors are no grade level. So what grade level is the passage? If the child is in third grade and reading third grade passages with 50% accuracy, you will not be rating them using a third grade passage. You're going to find out where their instructional rate is, where they're reading that passage with accuracy, and use that grade level passage for this type of progress monitoring. Accuracy level, you must include what's the accuracy expectation. Sometimes teachers will rate the students not based on their cold read, but their second or third read of that passage. And it's not indicated sometimes whether it's controlled or uncontrolled text. So that's very important as well. Obviously, when we start doing this for students who are just learning to decode and building their fluency, we start with controlled text. Like if you're using the Wilson system, you start with the passages within that, rules and sight words that they've been taught. Then we transition to the uncontrolled text when we see an improvement. With reading comprehension, here's an example. Amy will read a third grade nonfiction passage with audiobook support and be able to identify the main idea and 3 supporting details with 90% accuracy on 3 out of 4 trials as documented on weekly probes. The baseline is there in parentheses that she performed 60% before the interventions were implemented. So common errors with reading comprehension are no grade levels indicated. It's not indicated whether it's controlled or not controlled text. The hot or cold reads. What was the pre-reading before the assessment? Percent of accuracy could be too low. And how text is presented. Is it computer, audio, print? Is it read to the student, or are they reading it independently? Okay, with decoding, here's an example. Amy will be able to decode a list of 50 words from the third grade word list, 10 CVC, 10 CV, 20 vowel consonants, so forth, with 95% accuracy on weekly reading probe. Common errors is not grade level. Also just targeting one syllable type and lack of accuracy level. And sometimes there's too small of a bank of words provided. For spelling, Amy will be able to spell and code a list of 50 third grade words from various type of syllables with 95% accuracy on 3 out of 4 trials on weekly time probes. The baseline 10 out of 50 words. Common issues, leave out spelling goals, no grade level, and accuracy. Oftentimes we get IEPs without any spelling goals and objectives, even though that's something that's been identified as an area of weakness. Okay, so we're going to take a look at progress monitoring for reading and spelling. Sorry, this keeps popping up. All right, so here's a really good reference that you can find many different resources and progress monitoring toolbars and graphs and materials that are already created for you, and they're free. It's called interventioncentral.org. It provides an easy and quick method to gathering student progress. The teachers can analyze the student scores and adjust student goals and instructional programs, and the data provides individual measures of progress. So this covers everything from reading to math, writing, spelling. I'm just sharing this resource because it is free and it's a very reliable norm reference resource. So it's a good area to pull from if you need some additional resources. Okay, so here's an example of a progress monitoring graph, and this is looking at repeated reading, so the rate of progress that we see after we do a repeated reading. The bottom line, the blue, is the number of errors when they're reading, and the black is the reading rate that we're seeing. So this is the way you take your data and compile it into a very visually pleasing graph, so you can share that information with parents and review the progress very well. Progress monitoring reading. So we want to look at passage reading fluency, reading maze. These test global behavior that look at many different skills taught in the annual curriculum. So this is a way to do a cumulative measure of how they're taking the interventions you're providing them in a very systematic way and able to apply it in different types of tasks that involve reading. So reading fluency, we talked about the reading fluency chart, and here's just a glimpse on first grade. The reading rate is about 60 words per minute, second grade 90, and you can see how that goes up. So reading fluency is just providing student with a passage, whatever level they're at, or controlled or not controlled, and having them read that and determine how many words per minute are read. Okay, reading maze. This is an example of reading maze, and what this is the student is given time to read this passage and then circle the appropriate word choice out of those three provided. And you see the chart that goes along with that. A spelling flow chart is a way to really target some skills for children who struggle with encoding. It's daily testing of a few words, like 3 to 5 words, and then you keep the word on the list until it is spelled correctly 3 days in a row, and then keep it in a file box. Review weekly. If incorrect, add the word back into the list until correct for 3 days in a row. So you select words from the student's writing or high frequency words to add to this chart. So this is a great research-based way to increase overall spelling, especially of those high frequency words. So other ways to monitor fluency and accuracy. Some students require what we call precision teaching or skill acquisition programs, where we extract different skills and really run intensive interventions in those areas. So we can do different things with reinforcers. We can review performance on each trial. We could provide multiple opportunities, and then we can graph these different types of skills that we target. Okay, so here's weekly growth rate. For some different areas, we can figure out how much progress is expected per week. So if a child is, say, they're reading 20 words per minute, and the weekly growth rate is 0.7 per week, we would do some math to figure out how many words per minute they would increase over a period of time. So one of those objectives could be in 30 weeks. So we figured out in 30 weeks, based on the growth rate, adding it to 20 would be 41 words per minute. So in 30 weeks, given 1 minute to read a grade 4 passage, Tom will read 41 words correctly in 1 minute. So there's all sorts of norms out there to determine the weekly growth rate. Spelling rating scale. So you can use rating scale to evaluate responses on spelling tests. This is a great way to look at students based on their developmental spelling levels. So those students that are at the pre-phonetic stage and we're moving to the phonetic stage, you can use this to monitor how much progress they're making. So you can read through this, but basically they would have 0 points if there's just random letters on a page. 1 point if they have one correct letter, 2 points for 2 correct letters. So you would want to see an improvement as you go through to earning 6 points for the correct spelling. Okay. I wanted to share with you a great article and resource. This is called the Corpus Collosum Dyslexia, the Missing Link. Here's the link, and it's basically talking about the Corpus Collosum and the impact it has on reading development. It's often associated with ADHD, so it's another great resource to take a look at.